who are getting into, black kids who are allowed to get into these universities around the country, right, based on affirmative action, and because of affirmative action based on their color, that's discrimination based on color, and that's wrong. And these kids are getting in, but they're not earning their way. So when they fail, they feel less than before they were allowed to get in based on
color. What do we do with Jesse Lee Peterson and his line of reasoning? He has a way of asking the proper questions and make his invitees feel somewhat he makes them tell on themselves. Let's just put it that way. I don't agree with everything he does. Some things he says I would be like, I wouldn't do it that way, I will do it differently, but that's me. But he is certainly a force for good, if you were to ask me. So let's listen to what Jesse Lee has to say today. We have another one of those discussions. Enjoying victim status is the title of this video, and we're going to take a listen to that because there is this victim mentality that is happening in our culture today. It is deplorable, if you were to ask me, because it holds people back. But some feels as though without that they can't survive. We need to feel and made to feel like a victim instead of owning and taking responsibility and accountability for our own decision and actions. But who am I to judge? When you are new to the channel, if you happen to be new to the channel, make sure you give me a like and subscription, subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon for more of my notification upload. Once again, my name is Pastor James, and I'm glad you are here. Yeah, without further ado, let's get into the heart of this message. Jesse Lee Peterson, enjoying victim mindset. Yeah, let's see what this is all about.
Does white privilege exist?
Absolutely.
It does.
Absolutely.
And where's the proof of that?
All around. You know, I tell people often now, in hindsight, one of the things that I wish I would have been more cognizant of was the white privilege at UCLA that was sitting, you know, right next to me. For black people, I believe white privilege is something to leverage.
What is it though? I don't see it anywhere. What is it?
Yeah, what is it?
What
is it?
she said, where is it? I did a video of Tom McDonald's Straight White Male, where Tom really had some fun with this white privilege concept. Oftentimes, you know, it comes under attack, especially white male today. It must be tough being a white male, at least a straight white male. Let me get it right. It's not just a white male, a straight white male in America. If you are, it seems like all hell are against y'all. But I'll tell you something, it's just the notion behind the hatred and the level of jealousy that is fostered in the name of, you know, fighting the patriarchy, fighting this white I don't know what you would call that, but fighting the straight white male spirit. Whatever is behind that, I can tell you, is not of God. It is more communistic. It is more fascist. It is more racist than anything, if you were to ask me. But I love what she said. She's like, huh? She wasn't expecting that question to be asked, maybe by another black man. A lot of black people think all black people think the same way they do, and that's not really exactly the case. Some of us are thinking differently than some of y'all victim-minded blacks individuals.
Anywhere, what is it?
What
is it?
How don't you
For
not
people
see
like
white
me who
privilege?
don't see it.
How do you not see white privilege?
Because it doesn't exist. That's
yes,
what
it does.
So what is it exactly?
I believe white privilege is just the ability just to be free and white and not have the same type of social, economic, and social ills as black people have to deal with. I mean, there's no white racial profiling. White people don't get pulled over by the cops just because they're white. They have the ability to, you know, show emotion and love to their sons without being emasculated. There's all kind of examples of white privilege.
That you
Absolutely.
Believe that.
Why don't you black? How come you don't believe white privilege exists? What you see?
Well, because
That's the issue. You black. How come you don't see white privilege exists? It's like they think every black person should think like every other black person. In order for you to think like as a victor, not as a victim, automatically you become a target. It was like some of us are not thinking that way. By the way, we are thinking differently. We see the beauties, we see the goodness, we see the things that could be used in a positive way. We don't all believe in this Marxist theory. We don't all believe America is out to get black people. No, some of us do believe you can be the best of yourself that you can be. You can make something with yourself in this country if you put in the work, if you do what you ought to do, get rid of your hurdles, go through the walls. You might, some of us will succeed. Unfortunately, it doesn't work for all of us. Not everybody's going to win in a race. Some of us might not make it, but those of us who are putting in the work and doing some praying and soul searching, certainly, the avenues are there, the possibilities are there for us to succeed.
I am black in color, but I don't have that dark mentality that most black people have.
Clearly.
I see, she said clearly, I see that white people have the same struggles and things that we have.
Yes,
in
they
that
do.
What type of
they have
struggles
to
do they
make their
have?
marriages work. They have to make their children, help their kids grow up in the right way so that they can earn a living and be independent.
But they also have the majority of their
make
fathers
kids,
at home.
Right.
We don't
And the
have-
reason
But that's not a black people fault either. They have their fathers at home because they chose to remain committed to one spouse. That's really what happened, is that the family structure is strong for white. Unfortunately for the blacks, that's not the case. All right, we have fostered a culture that has taught us to destroy our home, not to value our wives and husbands, and our children are suffering as a result of that. We've also allowed big brother government to get inside of the sacred space of our marriage. We've allowed them to fund our women while they are kicking out the husbands, and those children are being raised by the hip hop culture. That's part of the reason why they're dying so quickly. The male presence is gone, and therefore we have to own up to the real reasons why we are in this situation. Personal accountability is needed here, not blaming the other culture because they're doing what they're supposed to be doing when we are failing to do what we should have been doing all along.
that it's starting to change somewhat now, but the reason for that is because they are taking responsibility for that, whereas black men and women are not taking responsibility
Facts.
for that, as they did prior to the civil rights movement. Black people are blaming it on their lack of self-control and self-containment. They're blaming it on white people,
Sure.
while white people are working hard to keep it going.
I do
for
believe
themselves.
that there is a need for black people to be held more accountable.
Amen. Okay, sister, now you're talking. This is good. This is a step in a positive direction here. When you start owning it, we can change it. We can fix it. At least we acknowledge that there is a problem. There's a disease. Therefore, we can call a doctor. But until that is done, we can play this game all we want and point the finger all we want, because internally we are destroying ourselves from within, and it's never going to really work ultimately in our benefit.
But that doesn't mean that doesn't excuse racism, that doesn't excuse institutionalized racism, that doesn't excuse...
But there's no
that-
such thing
Yes,
as that.
yes,
It's
it
an illusion
is.
made
No,
up
it's
by
not.
black people and their
it's
leaders.
not. No, it's not. It exists.
Well,
Sorry.
where's the proof of it, though?
Where,
Maybe
yeah,
where's the
where's the
proof of
proof?
it?
There
Yeah.
are many kids who are getting into, black kids who are allowed to get into these universities around the country, right, based on affirmative action. And because of affirmative action based on their color, that's discrimination based on color, and that's wrong.
I think some of these people came to Jesse Lee Peterson's channel, I'm guessing, and not realizing who he is. I think they came in for a shock, thinking I'm gonna talk to another black man, and next thing you know, they figure out they're talking to a man with a different way of thinking about the things that they weren't coming to be challenged. And I think it's actually really, really good the way he conducts these interviews as well, because then he's not able to, they come into a place where they're going to have a change of perception, because they're realizing, oh my Lord, not every black person actually agrees with me. There is another way of thinking about some of these things. And that's good. That's a good thing for them.
Kids are getting in, but they're not earning their ways.
Right.
So when they fail, they feel less than before they were allowed to get in based on color.
I'm a proud product of affirmative action. When I went to UCLA, it was because I was an affirmative action student.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And I think I turned out fantastic. So a lot of my peers who were having challenges getting into some of these predominantly white institutions, the affirmative action was great. My father went to Harvard. He was one of very few blacks.
Was he an affirmative action person?
I don't know if he was. That was back in the late 60s.
Well,
I don't
then
know.
he wasn't. He
Okay.
earned his way.
So, that being said, I still believe that affirmative action helped me get into UCLA, and it gave me access
You would
and
not have
exposure.
gotten in there on your own because you were not smart enough.
don't
Good
know if I was-
question. Good question. So you needed to be part of the affirmative action in order for you to get in there and do the things you needed to be done. Your skin color needed to be the reason why you were accepted in these schools rather than your intelligence and your academic success. These are good questions.
Smart enough, but based on the curve and what I was competing with other individuals who had different educational opportunities and teachers. I mean, I'm coming from the LA Unified School District. I mean, so at the time, I think LAUSD was still pretty good. But I went to all white schools from high school up
So you
through
got
college.
a good education. Why couldn't you get into the school based on your own talents?
There we go. Why not? She draws blank. She draws blank. Because there we go. These are the type of questions I love when he asks. He's just right on point because he puts you in a place where you're like, oh, snap. I never thought of it this way.
I don't know. Maybe because I didn't have some of the opportunity. Because,
But you had the opportunities.
First of all,
You had the same opportunity
SAT,
those white kids were having.
not necessarily. I had different teachers. I had different
So you went to a
resources.
white integrated school.
I'm talking about
mostly
going
white.
into these other into UCLA. I still had to be able to deal with some of the issues and going to predominantly white schooles.
Like
but I
what?
still had to be able to compete.
Like what?
What do you mean, like what?
Some of the issues going to a
I
predominantly
I would graduate from University High School, and at the time they didn't have an African American student union.
An African American student union.
At the school,
Well, that's a good thing.
they didn't have one.
That's a good thing.
Why?
Why do you need something like that?
They have Asian student unions. They have Jewish student unions. They have all kind of
Did
different.
they have
student
white
unions.
student union?
They need student union. They own the whole school. So
But the kids
there
didn't
were
own
no-
the school. The kids didn't.
But I'm
have it.
saying there's nothing. I don't think there's nothing wrong
It's
with having
amazing
a
that you think this way.
segregated,
It's amazing.
population of students who just want to study together, or work together, or to be able to
Would you
deal
be in
with.
support of a white student union?
Yeah, of course.
It would be okay with you?
Yeah, why
Okay.
not?
But most blacks don't feel that way.
I think all cultures should be able to segregate and to be able to work within their cultures and network within their own cultures. Absolutely.
Does racism exist?
I believe racism does exist.
And where's the
absolutely.
proof of that?
You just see it all over in the country. With proof of it. In terms
What-
of just
what do
the
I see?
disproportionate in the economics with black people.
But that has nothing to do with racism.
That's not
It
racism.
is. Racism is about power. It's about who's in control. And black people can't be racist because we're not in control. We're not in control.
Give me a break, woman. Black people can't be racist? Are you paying attention? Like, I think some of these people are not living in a reality. I mean, she sounds very intelligent. I can already tell this is a very smart lady. But ignorant at the same time. Ignorant in the sense that she doesn't know certain things. She doesn't realize how much she doesn't know. Black people can't be racist? Like what? Racism doesn't have a color. What are you talking about? Racism could be carried out by any group of individuals. It's just a matter of dominance, a matter of feeling special, a matter of thinking that you're better than somebody else. You can simply say that's racism at its heart here. It's in everything. It's in religion. It's in politics. It's in social. It's in culture. It's in everywhere. And I don't want to make racism the issue only here, because racism is the result of sin, and as long as there is sin, we don't love our neighbor as ourselves, there's going to be racism. And I'm going to be honest with you, because truly the gospel deals with racism. Because when you love God, you love your neighbor, you follow and obey what God tells you to do. You know not to kill, steal, commit adultery, not to bear false witness against your neighbor. That's the end of racism right there. Christ in my heart, the hope of glory, ends racism. But the issue we have with racism, it is birthed from a place of immorality. It is birthed from a place that the people who are racist do not have a relationship with God. And guess what? White, black, it doesn't matter what color they are. They can be racist. If the life with God, with Christ, if there is not a relationship with Christ, there is a reason, there is a door wide open for racism against any group of individuals.
The educational system, some of the social organizations and things that run this country, we're not in control. Racism about power.
But you would
What
be in
race is
control of your
control?
own life if you had good parents, if they taught you how to be independent, if they taught you how to build, how to take care of. I've noticed that the reason I left where I lived over there in the Crenshaw district is that once the white people left, because once I moved there, when I first moved there, it was mostly whites. But once they left, as they did in Gary, Indiana, and other places, the blacks turned it into a ghetto.
Let me testify. I live in a small town in Pennsylvania. A couple of years prior, before I moved, predominantly the people that lived there were Caucasian. They had their business and everything in that city. The buildings were beautiful. The streets were always clean. And I have pictures of how
A beautiful area went to hell in a handbasket.
I'm telling you, I have pictures of how things used to be. So when I moved from New York to Pennsylvania in that small town, and I see what I see, because the whites left, and the Hispanic and the blacks moved in, and you notice the difference. And I'm like, say what you want, okay? Wherever there is poverty, wherever there is crime and violence and drug and the dark version of hip hop, I like to say dark version because there's a bright version. Wherever those things are, and wherever there is a lack of faith in God, lack of a religious practice, wherever that is, you notice that the area change. I mean, the town where I was living, we no longer live there. We had to move out to protect our own family. It became one of the most violent towns in Pennsylvania. I think it's number 13 in the state. And we're talking about a small town. They turned it into a ghetto. I mean, I'm careful even driving there sometime. Like the stuff you see, the drug habits, people, on the side of the streets, just... It's sad. I mean, we share the gospel, we try to preach hope and share a few flyers here and there with individuals, but we try not to abide in that town because we're like, yo, this town is wicked. Last time I went there, a young man was shot in his face in front of his house. They put him on his knees, put a gun to his mouth, and shot him dead. Bang. And his girlfriend walked out and saw that. Like, this is what's going on. This is what's going on in these towns. Like, and we say there isn't something wrong with us. Yes, there's something wrong. It's called immorality. It's called immorality. He's on point.
Other places, the blacks turned it into a ghetto. A beautiful area went to hell in a handbasket, so I got out. But if blacks had more character and they were taking care of themselves and being responsible and buying land and teaching their children,
that has to be taught.
Then that has nothing to do with racism.
But that has to, of course, that has to be taught.
So it's not racist. It's not white people's fault that you're not teaching your children to do that.
No, but it's not. If the parents don't know.
Well, it's a broken home. The parents don't know because the parents themselves were raised by parents who also didn't know. So there is a cycle that needs to be broken here. There's a broken home. There is a broken church. And unfortunately, many of our black churches, and I'm not saying all, I'm not generalizing, many of our black churches have become a party club. Okay, we just dance and leap and jump and house and make a whole bunch of noise. We're not preaching the gospel as we should. Shame on us, because that goes into the culture as well. We just carry out this disease and we just pass it on and make matters worse to the black community. And is this happening in some white churches? I've been in some white churches where they're doing exactly the same thing. They're not preaching the gospel. It's all about emotional frenzy. It's all about jumping in enthusiasm here and there and everywhere, loud music and everything, dancing and whooping and howling. That's not Jesus. That's not good, because that destroys the soul and it robs people from the power of the gospel. So that also is part of the problem we have. We have a culture that is sick with demoralized music. We're talking about hip hop, money, sex, drugs. That's what they talk about. Okay, let's be honest. Self-centeredness, money, sex, drug is what majority of the dark version hip hop artists are singing about. We're hearing that consistently. We're watching movies consistently about that. Loaded with blood, Crips, and gang, and all that is in the culture. And then the kids are raised up without parents, without their mothers are working hard. Father is out of the home. What do you expect? You have a culture that is deplorable. And I think there are some powers that be who play a role in that, but I think the black race, has also perpetuated the problem. They took it and run with it. Unfortunately, our young black male who are selling the drugs in our community, we crown them kings. Okay, we make posters of them, we wear their t-shirt, we call them our idols, but they are the ones who are putting the drugs out there. So you're saying war on drug is a bad idea, but these guys are spreading drugs to the community where they're destroying black families. So what are we talking about here?
They don't know.
If
But that's not
the
white
parents
people's
don't
fault,
know,
though.
but if they go into some of these institutions, these predominantly white institutions, they are targeted. They don't have the same opportunities because of their color. It's true.
This girl,
I mean,
she
I've
is
why-
not living in a reality. She is so out of it.
There, then why not go to all black school if you
some
feel
people
that?
do choose to do that.
I'm sorry?
Some people do choose. That's
Well,
why
why you see a lot of these black kids going to these white universities, and then they force their way in by saying, I need affirmative action. Once they get in, now they crying racism. Why do you want to force your way in with the people you think are your enemies, and you're still complaining once you get there?
I don't think people are forcing their way. Does
They are.
affirmative action even
is
exist?
forced based on color.
Does affirmative action even exist? Are people getting in based on affirmative action?
Yes.
Today,
Otherwise, they wouldn't be there.
Yes. What's she talking about? Yes. I could have gotten in some colleges because of that. I know I didn't do it. That wasn't my call. I was called into ministry, but I could have. All you have to do is write a good essay and tell a beautiful story. That was it. Crazy.
The way Trump has it down, he's just leveled the playing field. So it is going to have to be more about being able to be competitive.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Now she said something that makes a lot of sense. And there we go. Again, save you, Larry Elder. Again, we have a problem in this culture. Part of this problem is that we fail to own up to our condition as blacks, and not just blacks. It's happening in all different races. But since this conversation was dealing with blacks, therefore I'm gonna aim my position in that direction. But the thing is, the best thing we could possibly do, I've been doing this 7 psychological sins, and one of the things that we talk about a lot for the issue of just accountability, the issue of blaming somebody else. Self-pity is the psychological sin. Self-pity is a major issue, and the way you solve that is just responsibility. Literally, just do what you're supposed to do. Own it up. Do your best. And there are doors open already you need to walk through. There are people and system put in place that will work in your favor. In this country, there are some racists. There are some people, I believe, they just don't want to see people rise. That happens everywhere. I believe they do exist in this country, but I don't think it's predominantly a white versus black issue as much as it used to be back then. I don't think that's what it is now. I think it has become more like a rich and poor issue. That's kind of where I see it, like the white man that lives next to you as a black man is possibly going through the same issues. Those, when you talk about white privilege, you're gonna have to say rich privilege, because the people at the top are probably the ones that are aiming down and dictating on how we should live and trying to control our lives, and they don't care what skin color you are. And I think that is really what's going on here. Rather than fighting against each other, we should actually unite and care for one another and fight against that which is wrong, which is trying to take away our dignity and destiny and personhood. And I think that's what we should be doing. But I could be completely wrong. But if I were to say one thing, these people oftentimes fail to do one thing only: their homework. Here is what the Bible tells us. Here we are told in First Peter 3. Yeah, I'm gonna, 1 second here, let me find this for you. 1 Peter 3, look at verse 15, and it reads, "But sanctify the Lord in your hearts, And be ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh you a reason of the hope that is in you with meekness and fear. Most time they are not ready to tell people why they believe the thing they believe. Now this is coming from a spiritual context. I get it, but let's move it over into the discussion that was happening with Jesse Lee Peterson here. These are a lot of blacks, okay, say stuff. They just regurgitate and repeat. They're just parroting things that were said by just people on television media. Very few of us are doing some serious homework. Very few of us are listening to the other side so we can come to a balanced perception. That needs to be done. We need to be ready to give a reason for the hope that is in us with meekness and fear. Take it back to the gospel, considering, do you believe the things that you believe because God says so? Do you believe it because somebody told you, your mama told you? Or do you believe it because it makes sense? It is according to the will of God and the word of God. That should be our motto. That should be our motto. And I'm hoping this video will urge you in that direction. Thank you so very much for listening. God bless you. Thank you for checking out this video with me. Until next time, and as always, once again, remember to look unto Jesus, to live by faith. Like and subscribe to the page. Have a good one. Bye.